Welcome y'all to Coffee Time with Mads. Notice the DJ is not added to that. I'm just not feeling the flow with that right now. So to be an example of honoring the flow these days, that I will be. Today, y'all, I really want to discuss how it's more of a practical topic of how can we help those in our circle, whether you're a mental health person, a friend, a parent, partner, how can we best show up for people that are in deep pain and struggle? I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't have someone in their life that's not connected to someone in an emergency or trauma or any kind of situation. It can be abusive, domestic violence, illness, suicidality. You guys, I mean, it is off the charts right now. So I feel called to speak to this morning or whatever time you're at. And just let's discuss this. And again, I come to you humbly with what I'm learning, fresh in the moment, with a history of education around trauma and all of these different ways and methodologies. And I'm uncovering for myself in this new frequency we're in, new ways of being, new ways of showing up. And I know pain very deeply. I know shame. I know all of those feelings very deeply. So I have a deep, deep, deep respect for anyone going through anything that is involving that deep, deep suffering, pain, whatever word, depression, anxiety, you name it, right? Abuses. So how can we best show up? The first thing I want to say, and I've said this before, we can really only go as deep with another as we've gone with ourselves. We can really only go as deep with another's feelings as we've understood our own. So keeping that in mind, it holds a respect, right? When someone comes to you or to me or to any of us in their trauma, in their pain, what is the most important thing that I can offer is number one, a respect for the fact that they have the courage to reach out, to share. Now let me clarify. Since I have worked deeply with trauma and in a crisis center and in that sort of scenario, I want to really clarify, when there's trauma up, there's a different way to respond. And that is called first responder stuff. That's learning, knowing how to resource, contacting, let's say if it's domestic violence or it's rape or it's something and this just happened, or it's suicide. One of the biggest things I can recommend from my years of experience is finding out what crisis centers are in your area. There's hotlines for this. If you don't know, you can call a hotline, look the hotlines up, and they can do referrals because those things need a different kind of attention right away. And then we have, let's say someone's going through a connection to someone who's going through domestic violence or suicide, deep depression, anxiety. That's what I'm going to speak to more of. Like I said, none of us are unaffected right now by the trauma on the planet and all the deaths and the whole COVID and the pandemic and all the things that are flying around. The anger and violence is off the charts. So none of us are going unaffected. It doesn't matter how much healing work you've done, how much therapy you've done. This is a new level. This is a new mastery. So, like I said, I humbly speak. But now I'm going to get back to the practical question. How can we best help? So number one is remembering how powerful it is when someone can reach out and share what they feel and their vulnerabilities. I love one of my favorite musicians back in the day, Tori Amos, said, our vulnerability is our greatest strength. And there's a false message in our history that that's a weakness. But let me tell you what, the truest warriors are the ones that can own their shit and own their gold and their vulnerability and their weaknesses and every which nook and cranny there is as a part of the humanness. That's strong. The people that I have been able to share the deepest love with are the ones that have shown up for themselves and have been unafraid, or were afraid, it can be very scary, to share, my God, today I feel like a fucking loser, or I feel like helpless in this situation. Whatever it is, that's powerful. And I make sure I have clients, such deeply sensitive, beautiful, emotionally intelligent clients. And that's one of the first things. I'm in awe of a person's ability to be upfront about whatever they're going through. So to be met with that respect is so huge, because the shadow of that, which is really huge in our mental health culture and in our helping field and in a lot of, it's just history, you guys. It's that repression I talked about. The biggest thing that any of us want to do, and I have been there, let me tell you what, when you get labeled a therapist or whatever you are, there's so much pressure to fix it. And that is an old message, that when someone's coming to you vulnerable, we're taught to basically be here and they're there and we're here to fix it. It's like becomes a hierarchy instantly. So my challenge or my encouragement is to ask yourself, what's triggering in me to feel like I have to fix something for this person? Because what happens is it reduces that person and puts them in a box. And then we're taught all these methodologies, and there's nothing wrong with methodologies, but if we're using that instead of really deeply showing up and saying, and really being with them and listening, the shadow of that is that we turn them into every other statistic around, this is what helps. And because I've done this so much in my history, and I'm really learning that it cuts that person off from their own intelligence, from their own wisdom to know what to do. And if we just listen and let it be uncontrolled, and again, if it's crisis, this is different. Okay, this is a different kind of crisis that can unfold in a person. And we're all going through it in our own ways. How can we just show up and listen without trying to find all the ways to control it and define it? Yeah, it's not easy. This is a deep call, right? I'm just opening that, or planting a seed in that conversation, because that person is sacred, their experience and everything. And if we can look at it from a place of there's nothing wrong, and see the essence and see the flower, right? See the seed that's blooming, and showing up by just listening and remembering their experience isn't my experience, even if it's the same war, right? So how can we just show up and listen without the need to control and define and label? Try that if you're someone interested in this, and see what happens. Remember the mystery of a person, the power of their wisdom and intelligence when we show up and deeply listen. And another thing I can add on a practical end is you can always ask, hey, at the end of listening, hey, is there anything you need from me in this? And then if they ask, that's a different situation. It's an empowered sort of coming alongside somebody. So that is what I wanted to share. Thank you so much for listening. And it's MadisonChristine.net. I do still have openings for holistic counseling sessions, which I so love doing. And I'll meet you all on the flip. Thank you so much.